guys, welcome back. My name is Hilary. I am a medium psychic. If you're new here, welcome, and if you want to know a little bit more about me, you can go and look at my previous videos where I discuss my gifts and my story and a lot of things about, how I receive messages from the spirit world and how I channel spirit. But today, I'm not going to be explaining that much to you guys, just because it gets kind of repetitive and annoying. So yeah, like I said, if you're new, go check out my other videos if you have any questions. And also subscribe, like, share, all those fun things, because it really helps my channel and it really helps me grow. And I really, really, truly appreciate it. So today we are going to be discussing another case that... Honestly, this one has been popping up to me quite a bit when it comes to just seeing this person's face and name everywhere. So to me, that is a sign from spirit usually that this is probably a case that I should be doing when I'm randomly seeing the same, the same person or the same name, the same type of case over and over again. And so today's case was not requested reading. It might have been requested previously, but it hasn't been requested for a while. But today's case is going to be on Michael Jackson. So I did channel Michael Jackson, and I was able to connect with him very quickly, which wasn't surprising to me because of the constant messages or the constant, signs that I was getting from my spirit guides to do his case. So I'm sure everyone knows about Michael Jackson. I don't really think I have to go into explaining much about him. So I'm just going to tell you what happened when I went into meditation and connected with him, and let you guys know, what exactly went on with his murder, or I'm not going to call it a murder, sorry, went on with his, his death and everything else in his life. People have questions about it. And he is a very assertive, he's gentle but assertive when I connect with him. And he does come through to me like he would have been when he passed away. So that was kind of refreshing, because sometimes spirits come into me in different ages and I don't really recognize them. So, this usually when I am connecting with spirit, I get a lot of mixed messages, I get visions, I get a lot of different things. I get random words and I get random feelings, and these are all different ways that spirit communicates with mediums and psychics and just people in general, to be honest, because we all receive messages from our spirit guides. We just don't really realize that it's happening. So I'm just going to let you know that this was like a straight out conversation with him. It was very clear. It was clear as a bell. And I got the impression that this is clearly not the first time that he has been channeled. So we'll just get right into what he said and what went on with our conversation. So, I say hi and I thank him for connecting with me and being able to give us the information that a lot of us have questions about, and to speak with me and allow me to tell you guys what he's saying on my YouTube. He's very adamant about, the very first thing he wants to talk about is that he was very adamant about never hurting children. He never hurt children. He says that he does regret some things that he did, like going in a bathtub with a child and holding hands with children and just being as close with children as he was. And he says that I ask him, why he regrets this, and he says, well, you know why, but I know you want to explain it to your subscribers on your channel, so I guess I will explain this. I guess I'll explain it more to you. He says, so there was a maid that was working for me and others as well, lots of others, he says, that knew how much money he was worth, so they accused him of being... they accused him, he said, of doing unspeakable and disgusting acts against children. He was accused of being a child molester and other things, and there was documentaries that were made about him about these type of things. And I apologized to him, like, in a way to say that I feel sorry that these things were done to him and these accusations were made about him. And I do know about the documentaries because I don't live under a rock. And he says, I was only very loving to these people, and maybe I was too loving. So he means people in general, but he mainly means children. So he says that he gets, though, why he was given the image he was given, like he doesn't get it. It's almost like he's saying he understands why people accused him. He's not referring to The Maid or other documentaries. I'm picking up like on a little boy and his mother that made documentaries about him, saying that he molested them, or that there was things being done by him to children. He's not talking about them because he's almost like he's giving me the impression that those people were they just wanted his money, okay? But he's saying that in like not his fans, I guess, other people in general, he understands why, he was put into that light, why he looked like he was doing these things, because he was so close with children. And he talks about how, he was never given he didn't have a healthy childhood, and so he was never taught about proper boundaries in regards to love and intimacy with other people, especially with children. He says, he just wanted, the reason why he was around so many children is because he was trying to relive his childhood, which is also why he opened the park, the Neverland Ranch, which he brought a lot of children to, as we know, and there was sleepovers, etc. But he was just trying to relive his childhood. He says that, his childhood was so crappy that he wanted to be a child again, and, that was very healing for him as well. So I asked him to tell me about his childhood more, to talk about it more. If he didn't want to, I understood. He says, well, I don't mind. None of it is really a secret. He says, but I did not have a normal upbringing, as other children did. And as most people know, my father was extremely abusive. He says, even though I have forgiven him, he was also abusive to his siblings, which is why he said that he never could have healthy boundaries with people. He was never taught healthy boundaries. So at this point, I'm getting an image or a vision of sexual things being done, so incest things being done in front of Michael, with him and his siblings, and to respect privacy and all that. I'm not going to get into the details of the vision I'm seeing, because he does make me feel like, and he does tell me that he doesn't really want too many details being said. It's not really needed. But there was, he's trying to explain why he had such unhealthy, I guess, impressions or behaviors in regards to children. Is because of the way he was raised. So he says that, the details, once again, he says, don't really matter as much, but there was also, beatings and whippings with things, unimaginable things, against him and his siblings, and then he does say they were forced to be sexual with each other, and this was a way of showing, this is a way that their family, this was normal. So he's making it seem like this was a normal way that their family would interact with each other. It was almost a way that they would show each other they loved each other. It wasn't abnormal to this family to do these things with each other, and it was a way, he's saying, that they would show each other that they loved each other. And he said that his mother was a little more against it than his father was, but she was also raised in a family that had a similar upbringing to his father, so it was something that she was used to. So, that explains why she married Joe, which is his father, and married or, you know, was okay with these. He said that she wasn't okay, that she would actually, his mother would defend him and his siblings quite often, but she felt powerless and like she couldn't do anything about it. And she also, in a way, he says, agreed to some of it because of the way that she was brought up. So it was also sort of normal to her. So he said that his father was a well-known man. He was part of a yacht club, and that they mingled a lot with rich people growing up as children. So even if they did say anything about the situation that was, you know, if him and his siblings said anything about what was going on with them, that his father, you know, no one would believe him because his father was so well known and well liked and, you know, very well known. And like they were the Jackson 5, right? So no one, it's almost like people would never believe that. They just wouldn't. And he says that his father grew up experiencing molest and abuse, like I said. So it was a continuous cycle in their family, a cycle, he's saying, that needed to be broken but never was. And he's saying that also, even though his father, I'm not too knowledgeable on this, but I'm getting the impression that his father played an instrument, or his father was musical as well. But he's almost like he's saying to me, my father was like that, but yet he still made fun of us, especially us boys, for being talented and being in playing, you know, the piano and instruments. That they would call him and his brothers, he would call his brothers a sissy, and that they weren't very manly, and he would make fun of them in that regards. So I tell him how, unfortunately, these cycles are passed down throughout families and generations, and usually it takes, I tell him, like a black sheep to be the one to break the cycle. I'm kind of that one in my family. Not saying that there's that type of abuse and all that in my family. There is obviously things in my family that need to be broken, however, and it takes a black sheep to break the cycle. And he said, he was agreeing with me. He nodded his head and said, exactly. So I asked him if he can talk to me about his death next, and what, you know, if he wants to talk about that and what he has to say about that. He says that it's no secret that he was depressed and that he was struggling a bit, not a bit, he says he was struggling a lot before he passed away. You know, he wasn't happy, he was slowing down, he was getting older, and his anxiety was getting worse, he said. He tells me that he was a man in his 50s, and he was slowing down, and he said he was on medication for his anxiety and for, you know, other things, like mostly mental health and picking up. But he says that he also wasn't sleeping, he was on medication for insomnia, and that his doctor, Conrad, he was asking, so he's admitting that he was asking his doctor to give him more medication throughout the whole, you know, I'm getting like 3 to 6 months before he passed away, that he was asking, you know, he was asking to be put on this medication. But he's telling me that he was very, very careful. He's asking me questions. He's asking me, do you really think that with all of my, you know, I was such a control freak, he says. I had bad anxiety, I had OCD. He's like, do you really think that I would not be careful about that, what I put in my body? He's giving me the impression that he was like a very careful person about what he would put into his body. So he does say that he never agreed to the doses that were given to him in the end. And like, he pretty much, he says that, so I tell him I don't know much about his death. I apologize, even though like he's Michael Jackson and like he's really famous, and he laughs and says he's really understanding. He says that's okay. He says that he had major anxiety and he was a very careful person. So I ask him, so this wasn't suicide? He tells me, no, it was not suicide. It was not an overdose. he said he had no intention of overdosing. He had, he mentions again that he was asking for more medication, but the propofol, sorry, oh my god, did I say that wrong? It's a P name medication, I feel dumb, but that medication, he said he did not agree to that medication in that dosage, is what he's telling me, that the dosage was really high and that he did not agree to that being put into his body. He says that he doesn't want to point fingers because, coming from a spiritual perspective, he says, in what he's learned on the other side, is that nothing is really a coincidence. He's kind of saying, like, everything happens for a reason, but he doesn't want to point fingers, and he doesn't want to assume the intentions of Conrad. But he's very adamant, and he says he's kind of pissed off that people think that he overdosed and that he died from an overdose or suicide. So he says that what he did die from was a heart attack. And like he starts to get a little bit angry and say that, I wasn't a druggie. He says I wasn't like people made me out to be and made me look what they made me look like, especially being, he says once again, the control freak that I was. But he said that he would not agree to a dosage that would kill him, is what he's saying. So he said that the last shows that he was doing, he was booked for about 10, and he says that they were actually booking him between 40 and 50 shows when he only agreed to doing 10. So he says, I was struggling. He said that his fans are really, really important to him. They were important to him. They still are important to him. So he was very hard on himself. He was a perfectionist. And he's saying that the medication he was putting into his body was helping him cope with the pain his body was going through during those shows, because he's saying, like, he was an entertainer. He wasn't just a singer. He said, so even doing 10 shows for a regular person who just sings on stage, he says he danced as well. He was an entertainer. He's like, so can you imagine how hard that was on my body, especially being 50? He says, he knew he couldn't do it. He's saying he knew he couldn't do it, and the medication was a way of him coping with this and trying to get through it for his fans. So he's saying he was so drained. Being the perfectionist that he was, it was just making it so much harder on him to admit that he couldn't perform. He couldn't do these shows anymore. So, he's pretty much saying he was done, but with entertaining, but he just didn't want to admit to that. He didn't want to admit to the defeat. Ask him if he has anything else to say. He says that he wants to say how proud he is of his children, that he loved his children, he still loves his children very, very much, and that he is still mad and he's upset that they had to see the documentaries that were made about him, that he was put into that spotlight and they had to see that about their own father. He says that he would never want that for anyone's children, to have to live in that shadow. He says he doesn't want them to believe that about him. He wants them to remember him as the father, the loving and caring father that he was. And he wants them to know how much he loves them and loved them. And that what they know about him, what they've seen with him, is the truth, not what the media and, everyone has portrayed him to look like. So he tells me that he says, I said, okay, thank you so much. I thanked him for explaining that to me. And then he says, there's one more thing. He's very adamant. He says, there's something else I want to talk about. And he says, that was my appearance and my surgeries and the way I looked. He says, I know that freaked some people out. And he's saying that because he's picking up that, not that I'm freaked out or that I was freaked out. That's something that I've always wondered about personally, was about his surgeries. And he says that there's reasons behind his surgeries. There's a few of them, but he says the main one was that he didn't want to look at himself in the mirror and see his father, which was one of the reasons why he had a lot of the surgeries he had, was because every time he looked at himself, he would see his father in the mirror. And he didn't want to see that anymore. He said, though, that his mental state also had a lot to do with it, his anxiety. He said he had body dysmorphia. He struggled with anorexia. I didn't know that until he told me that he struggled with anorexia and eating disorders. And the surgeries were also a direct result of his body dysmorphia. But also, I didn't really want to mention this because I don't want to come off as racist, because I'm not at all racist or anything like that. But he says that he struggled with being black. He didn't want to be black. And I'm getting this, like, connection with money in regards to this. Like, almost like people will look at him like he shouldn't have that much money because he was black. Please don't come at me. I'm not racist. I'm just telling you guys what I am getting and what he is telling me. And he says, he's saying to me, he was proud of being black. That's not what it was. He's saying that it had everything to do with his career, and that is why he didn't want to be looked at that way. He says as he got older, he knew that was wrong. He sort of he regretted doing that and making those decisions that he made. But back in the younger, he's giving the impression like the younger ages he was at in his career, that's when he felt that way. So that's about it, you guys, that I got on Michael Jackson. He says that he's really watching over his kids on the other side. He forgives everyone. He says he still has a bit of anger about the way he was being portrayed because he wasn't nothing like that. So anyways, you guys, that is what I got on Michael Jackson. If you could subscribe, like, share, like I said, I think in the beginning, that really helps me. And I will see you guys on my next video. I hope you have a great day. Bye, everybody.